You look like you're a little bit tense.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how about providing me an overview of what you think we're going to talk about today?
Well, I got my evaluations back from last semester, and they weren't the greatest, so I figured that's what we're going to talk about, and I don't know. They just weren't very good.
Okay. Well, you've had a chance to review them, and I wonder if we could just step back for a minute and tell me about what parts of the teaching evals did you consider to be good?
Well, students generally say they like the way I do things, they like the discussion, they like the flexibility of the discussion that we have in classes, and part of what they like also goes with part of what they don't like, but you know, they tend to enjoy it. They like that I'm asking their input, asking for their opinions, and then I'll provide information. Not to say their opinions are wrong, but you know, think about this, that kind of thing. And it's not all lecture; it's a lot of discussion, and I don't know. They like the handouts to find the answers to some things, but then some of it is discussion, some of it is what is the correct answer for these kinds of things.
So you have really tried to put together a course that moves away from just a general lecture and involve the students and help them discover answers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that part you see that's going kind of well.
Yeah.
If we were to move into the things that are not going so well, how would you describe those areas, or how would you identify those areas?
Okay. Well, to go along with what I had just said, part of that flexible discussion they like, but then that will back us up a little bit in the syllabus, in the schedule for the semester. And so some of the students get a little on edge if we get off of what the tentative schedule is, and I always do put the word tentative by my schedule. I've learned to do that, but they still, if they see something is supposed to happen on a certain date, some of them have a real hard time with adjusting to the flexibility of, oh, the discussion's going into the next day, so we're going to push something back. So that's one of the key areas. And then the other thing is, I just don't always have the time to enter all the grades onto Blackboard. They get all of their papers back or their assignments back with their scores, so they can keep track of everything, and I get it back within the 2-week time frame, but I don't always have the time to put that on Blackboard, and they tend to like to go to Blackboard and see everything there for them right in front of them.
Okay, so the students, some of them are wanting you to stay exactly on the syllabus. However, that's complicated when you're trying to incorporate the active learning discussion points. And then grading seems to be another point. Some of them want their grades immediately on Blackboard, and you're finding that a challenge.
Yes.
Anything else that...
Along with the grading, you know, I try to stick by that 2-week time frame. In the evaluations, one of the questions is, do you get your papers back or your assignments back within 2 weeks? So that's my, no longer than 2 weeks should I take to grade papers. And so certain assignments aren't going to take long, but longer papers will. So I might take up until that 2-week mark. And again, some of the students would rather have that almost the next class, which is pretty difficult to do.
Okay, so we could talk about a lot of different things here today. We could talk about structure, we could talk about time management. But before we were to go in that direction, what are the areas that you've thought about that you can make changes for the next semester?
Okay, well, this Blackboard thing seems to be a thing that they all like, and so I thought, okay, I can try very hard to get the scores on Blackboard. So one thing that I might do is maybe decrease some of the assignments so there's not so many numbers to be plugging in all the time. And I can do that without taking away from the class. So I could do something like that. Maybe make some assignments a little bit bigger instead of one assignment per chapter kind of thing. Maybe a couple chapters, something like that.
Okay, so you're looking at condensing some of the units to make it more manageable for grading.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that you thought of?
Well, I still really do like the discussion element, and I don't want to always lecture. I try to work with all different kinds of students who like the lecture, who like the discussion, who like the hands-on things. One of the things I did was put that word tentative in my syllabus, and apparently it still hasn't helped with some students. So, I guess, I could give more time frame for certain chapters or something like that. I can't always guess which chapters will bring on more discussion than others, but I could maybe say for the first 2 weeks we'll cover these certain chapters, chapters 1 through 3, give myself more time in the schedule, and then we can just keep moving along if we're going a little faster than anticipated. I might have some problems with that, but generally the discussion is what keeps us from moving forward quicker, sticking to the schedule.
Okay. And I'm wondering if there's anything else that you've thought of that you might be able to do?
Those are the main things. And the grading papers, I have a lot of classes, and so sometimes it just takes a long time to get to each class's papers. So I think in general for many of my classes to just try to decrease a little bit.
Okay.
Another thing that I could do if we have a really big paper in some classes, I've thought about changing it to like a presentation, a PowerPoint, because it doesn't take me as long to grade a PowerPoint as it does a paper, because I get a little obsessive compulsive, I guess, on making sure they write well in papers. I'm not that way with PowerPoints. I can be a little bit more flexible that way.
Okay, so it sounds like you could still have them write some papers, but mix that up with some presentations, which then would allow you to concentrate on the feedback for the papers and more or less just score how their presentations are going.
Yes.
Would you be interested in a couple of other things that other instructors have done when they're in your situation?
Sure.
Okay, I wonder about one thing is, have you, and you may have already done this, but have you tried to stack so that papers are coming due at different times in different courses?
I have not really tried to do that. The thought has occurred to me every once in a while, but I've not completely tried to make that.
If you were to decide to do that, what would be your first step?
I guess I would take my more difficult classes first and decide when things have to be due for those classes, some of the longer papers and things like that, and then go to the lower level classes, the 100 or 200 level classes, and then adjust it to the more difficult classes.
And is there anything in particular that you can think of that would help you be able to stack those class assignments? I could change some, typically in a lot of classes we have mid-semester papers or mid-semester tests and then the finals. I could try to just have them a week earlier or something like that in some classes, so that it would just be a little bit easier to go through some of those last difficult couple weeks of mid-semester and end of the semester. Okay, all right. So I'm going to ask you a silly question.
Okay.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 not really, and 10 extremely, how important is it for you to improve in your teacher evaluations?
I'm pretty high up there. I like to get good evaluations. I don't like to have low scores, so 9, 10, pretty high.
Okay. Yeah. And why are you a 9 and not a 7?
Because I tend to want to reach for the highest. That's just how I am. Yeah.
So becoming the very best teacher you can is extremely important to you. Okay. Now, as we look at this upcoming semester, and if we look at that same scale, on 1 pretty low confidence and 10 extremely high confidence, how confident are you that you might be able to put a couple of the strategies you've identified in place?
I would say 7 or 8, something like that. Okay,
so you're a 7 or an 8, and what would it take to get to an 8 or an 8.5?
Well, I scored lower on this scale just because the reality of things sometimes can get in the way of what we want to have happen. I think really just to set a time to say, okay, I'm going to take all of my classes, I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to see when things are due. I mean, because it will take time to take 5 classes or wherever it is I teach, so put it in my calendar and say this is what I'm going to do at this time, and not let any interruptions make me go somewhere else, and just deal with that and then make it happen. So I would have to adjust some of my schedules for classes to some extent, but I think if I gave it to them, posted it, say this is what I'd like, and go over that it probably would be okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of things here today, but what's really important to me is, as you think about our discussion, what are the 1 or 2 things that you would really like to focus on in the next few weeks?
I do like the idea of looking at all my classes and trying to rearrange them so that they're not all due at the same time. That's a real good idea that I've not ever tried. And then the other thing is I could decrease some of the assignments and, put them into, a couple assignments could be 1 assignment, and then get those scores on Blackboard.
Okay. And so what kind of time frame would you be looking at to put this new structure into place?
I think if I set up a time within a week to look at my classes all together, I could get this all taken care of within 1 to 2 weeks at the most. But if I just schedule a time, give myself 1 hour, I could do it fairly quickly.
Okay. And what might you need, or who could help you get this done?
Well, I probably would need to go somewhere other than my office.
Okay, so you need to find an isolation place.
I need to hide, just because, I have a lot of students coming in and out, and they have important things to address, but, they could wait for an hour, probably. So just maybe going down to the library and having all the stuff I need for my classes, all the syllabi, and go from there. And maybe be somewhere with the computer, because then I could make some changes right away within this hour time frame. Have it all set for my classes to take to my next day of classes or whatever. So.
Okay. So as we're kind of closing up here, it sounds like it's really important for you to be the best teacher that you can be. And the other thing that I've gathered is that students actually are seeking you out.
Yeah.
Which is, a pretty good sign that they are trusting that they can work with you, or that you have things that are useful for them. But putting together a different plan and trying to maximize the time you have is what's really going to be your effort for the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
Okay. When would you like to reschedule another meeting?
Maybe give me 2 weeks, and maybe 1 week to see how I've gone, because I'm a deadline person. I work on a deadline, so.
So you're saying if I schedule with you for next week at this time, this task will be done?
Probably. If we wait for 2 weeks, it will take me 2 weeks to do it.
Okay. What was it like for this last interview? What was that experience like for you?
It was much more pleasant. I didn't feel like, oh my God, I'm the most horrible teacher in the world. And it gave me something like, oh gosh, yeah, I could do this. I've actually thought about something. So now it's giving me the push to actually implement things that I've thought about. There wasn't the pressure and the stress that, gosh, you didn't do very well.
Okay.
I didn't feel that at all.
Any ideas about why the pressure wasn't there?
Well, we talked about the things that were good, first of all.
Okay.
The strengths and just the approach. The approach was much more relaxed and much more affirming, and you helped me figure things out on my own.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, there's probably other things. Those are the main things. Thanks. I mean, I'm just not leaving this little meeting feeling like I'm a bad teacher, and feeling like, oh, there's plenty good that I can still do and change, and it's realistic. So.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.